Hello Star Citizens, welcome back to the channel. My name is Buzzkiller, and for the past 4 years, I've been creating and sharing my bindings for Star Citizen. Yes, I know it's been a while since my last video, but if you've been following me on Twitter, Reddit, and Spectrum, you'll know I've continued to update my bindings for every patch since 3.3. Since 3.13, I've been providing bindings for 5 different dual joystick and HOTAS setups. The current lineup consists of the dual Thrustmaster T16000Ms, the dual Virpil Constellation Alphas, the Thrustmaster FCS HOTAS, and a Virpil HOTAS consisting of a Virpil Alpha and a Virpil CM3 throttle. And finally, with the help of Subliminals TV, the dual VKB Gladiator NXT setup. If you're watching this, chances are you've heard of my bindings and would like to use them. So in this video, I'll be going over how to download and import my binding files into Star Citizen Alpha 3.17 and beyond. This video should stay relevant until CIG makes any drastic changes, at which point I'll have to remake the video again for a third time. So without further ado, let's get started. Let's start off by discussing hardware, specifically how you should plug in your input devices. You see, Star Citizen is very finicky when it comes to joystick numbers. For example, sometimes your right joystick will be configured as joystick 1. Other days, it'll randomly swap over and become joystick 2. This obviously causes issues with your bindings. In order to minimize the chances of the swap occurring, when plugging in your joysticks, I recommend doing so in the same order and into the same USB slot every time. If you do find your joysticks are swapped, don't worry too much. I'll tell you how to fix that later in the video. Now let's talk about USB hubs. If you're plugging your joysticks into one of these devices, it can cause complications with your joystick numbers. Some hubs initialize their slots in a random order. Others don't. I'm currently using an Insignia brand powered USB hub that runs off my computer's USB-C slot. This USB hub has not given me any issues whatsoever in Star Citizen, so if you're interested, I'll leave an Amazon link in the description so you can purchase one for yourself. Another thing that can throw off your joystick number is having extra analog input devices connected to your computer. Make sure when you're playing Star Citizen to only plug in the peripherals that you absolutely need. Avoid things like MFD button panels, game pads, rudder pedals, 3D mice, mini gaming keyboards like the Razer Tartarus, or anything that has an analog joystick attached to it. If any of these are plugged into a USB port or connected via Bluetooth, remove them before playing Star Citizen. Also, disable any virtual joystick devices you may have installed, such as VJoy. Other accessories like cameras, head tracking devices, and VR headsets, or even game glass devices, shouldn't cause any issues. On a side note, a lot of people have asked me if they can add an extra throttle or rudder pedals to their profile with my bindings. And while Star Citizen will support up to 5 input devices, when you have 3 or more devices plugged in, untangling their joystick numbers in the game becomes an absolute nightmare. And this is the primary reason I don't support binding setups with more than 2 devices. That's not to say you can't do it, but you're going to have issues. With the hardware out of the way, let's talk about software. When you get your new joysticks, you'll want to make sure you have the latest drivers and software for them. Mid-range and high-end sticks, like the VKBs and Virpils, usually require an initial firmware update as well as calibration and setup, while entry-level sticks, like the Thrustmasters, will generally work just fine out of the box. Make sure you follow the instructions on your joystick manufacturer's website when setting up your sticks. A quick note about the Thrustmaster sticks. Do not, I repeat, do not install Target. It does not play well with Star Citizen and will mess up your imported bindings. For many of my binding setups, I like to use modifiers to increase the amount of available buttons on the stick. However, Star Citizen, for some unknown reason, does not support the ability to use joystick buttons as modifiers. It does, however, let you use specific keyboard keys, such as Control, Alt, and Shift, as modifiers. Therefore, I use a little program called JoyToKey that allows me to emulate keyboard buttons and even certain mouse functions with my joystick. Currently, as of 3.17, the profiles that require JoyToKey are as follows. the dual T16s, the dual Vorpal Alphas, and the Thrustmaster FCS HOTAS. The dual VKBs and the Vorpal HOTAS profiles do not require JoyToKey to operate. So let's talk about JoyToKey. As I mentioned, JoyToKey is a great little program that can be used to emulate keyboard and mouse functions using your joystick buttons. To get the program, follow the link in the description of this video. While JoyToKey is shareware, the developer will ask you to pay a $7 fee to register it. If you don't, you'll occasionally get a pop-up when you start the program. I suggest going ahead and paying the $7 fee, as the developer does a great job of keeping the program up to date. Now that you have JoyToKey downloaded and installed, let me show you step by step how to download and import my binding files into Star Citizen and JoyToKey. Okay, so in the description of this video is a link to my Dropbox. This is where I keep all of my joystick bindings and binding charts. So clicking that link will bring you here, and you can see right now there are 4 folders. There's the current live build, which is 3.16, the current PTU build, which is 3.17, I've got blank binding charts, and old files. The blank binding charts are all of my binding charts that if you want to create your own bindings, you can download these and then put your bindings on them. Some of them are fillable PDFs, some of them you'll have to edit with other software. The old files are all the old legacy bindings for all the versions of Star Citizen I've supported, in case you like something from a previous build. Now, some of these older ones probably won't work because the structure has changed quite a bit. But we're going to talk about 3.17. So 3.17 PTU is our current build. So we're going to click on that. And you can see I have a folder for each of the setups I support. So the dual T16s, the dual Vorpal Alphas, so on and so forth. There's also a README file here. Now, if this video is a bit out of date or if you're having issues, check this README. It'll always have the most updated instructions on how to import the bindings, and it has some great troubleshooting tips and other setup tips for you. So make sure to check that README. Okay, so we're going to use the Vorpal Alphas as an example. So I'm going to go to Bindings, Dual Vorpal Alphas, and you can see in here there's several files. There's 2 alpha JoyToKey profiles, a regular and a mirrored version. We've got the dual alpha binding chart, which is just a graphical representation of all the bindings. And then you've got the actual exported bindings here. So the JoyToKey files will go into JoyToKey. The exported files will go into your Star Citizen folder. And then the chart will go wherever you want so that you can quickly access it and learn the bindings. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and select all of these files and click Download and send that to your download folder. So let's go ahead and open that folder. Now it looks like it opened it, it saved it as a zip. You can download these if you don't have an unzip software. You can download these individually without being zipped. So I have a zip file, so we'll go ahead and pull everything out here. And now everything is out. Let me go ahead and just delete some of this stuff. All right, so here are the files that we've downloaded. Okay, again, here's the chart. We'll go ahead and open that up and show you the best of my ability. It's kind of a small screen, I know, but this is the dual Vorpal Constellation Alpha chart. Each chart is a little bit different based on the setup, but you can see everything. All the bindings are in here and where they are. In the legend, you'll see the different types by different colors, which modifiers. So the modifiers, you hold the modifier key to use it. You've got hold, double tap, and various other modifiers like mining mode, missile operator mode. Okay, so now what do we do with these files? The first thing we need to do is find where Star Citizen is installed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on my RSI launcher here and open file location, and then click the up arrow to get to the base folder. Now normally in this folder, right under RSI launcher, you'll have Roberts Space Industries. You'll have either live or PTU. That's if you've installed your default location. Now I have not installed to my default location. So let me go ahead and open up my location. So my Star Citizen shortcut for PTU. Okay, so you'd be in Robert Space Industries, Live or PTU. We're doing this for a PTU version. You're going to click on User, Client, 0, Controls, Mappings. Now in here, you're going to put the XML files. So here's our download folder again. And the XML files are usually named something like layout, Buzzkiller, dual alphas, or 317 exported. There's two of them now. There's one for clear bindings and there's one for dual alphas. I'll go over how to use those here in a minute, but we're going to just pull those files into your Star Citizen folder. And you can go ahead and close this. Now the next thing we need to do is pull the JoyToKey files and put them into your JoyToKey configuration folder. So let's go ahead and start JoyToKey, and this is what it'll look like when you first start it up. Make sure you have your joysticks plugged in before you start the program. If not, make sure to close the program and then restart it. Now close it completely, because if you just hit the X, it'll go to your tray. So go to File and go to Exit. But let me give you a close-up view of this here. There we go. So yeah, so this is what it'll look like. You should only see two joysticks, 1 and 2. They may or may not be lit up like this. But if you move your joysticks, like I'll move my right joystick, and I can see that my right joystick is joystick 1 because it's lighting up yellow. Joystick 2 is my left joystick. And that's the standard configuration. Most of my JoyToKey profiles assume that your joystick 1 is your right, joystick 2 is your left, or your throttle. If not, then you'll use the mirrored version of the profile. So let's go back to our downloads. And here in JoyToKey, we're going to click on File, Open Config Folder. So this is your config folder. This is in your My Documents folder. You're going to pull the two JoyToKey files, they're little config files, drop those into your JoyToKey. And all we have left in here is your binding chart, which I just showed you recently. So we'll go ahead and close the download folder. Now in order to get these to populate, again, you're going to have to exit out of JoyToKey and then restart it. Now you'll see something like this. So you have BK Alpha JoyToKey, BK Alpha JoyToKey mirrored. Remember, if joystick 1 is your right stick, you use the standard one. If joystick 2 is your right stick, you'd use the mirrored version. Now if we go through this, you can see that there's a few things bound in here. For the Virpils, there's more bound than the other profiles. So I've got mouse functions bound on the right thumbstick, right joystick's thumbstick, so that emulates your mouse. You've also got things like on button 4, it's mouse right click. That's to allow you to use dual weapon setups, or two different weapon setups separately, fire your weapons separately. And then on the right joystick, all that there should be on there is the F4 button for camera changing, and button 30 is right control, which is your modifier. Now this may change from version to version, but just know that there's not going to be a whole lot in these profiles. There's just enough to get that joystick to work. All the main binding is done in game. So let's go ahead and start up Star Citizen, and I'll show you how to get that portion started. Okay, so here we are in Star Citizen, and the first thing we're going to want to do is go into the Options menu, go to Key Binding, click on Advanced Controls Customization, go to the right here and select from Keyboard Mouse over to Joystick HOTAS. Now this is going to give us our Joystick HOTAS menu, and if you open this up, you'll probably see there's a few buttons in here already. But these are the default bindings, and they're pretty much useless for your joysticks most likely. So what we're going to do is click on Control Profiles, and the very first thing we want to do is clear all device bindings. Now, Star Citizen has a little selection here, clear all device bindings, but this doesn't work very well. It leaves a bunch of bindings in there. So we're going to use my clear bindings file. So bk clear bindings. Don't worry about keyboard and mouse, or you can if you want. It doesn't really matter. We'll go ahead and do it. It doesn't really matter. But for keyboard, we'll select keyboard. Mouse, we'll select mouse. Joystick, 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 joystick. Now you'll see there's a drop down here, and you can select joystick 1 or 2. As of right now in 3.17, this does absolutely nothing. So changing these does nothing. So I just leave it on joystick 1 for both of them and click load. Now this should get rid of all bindings. So if you open these folders, open all these drop downs, you should see there's absolutely no bindings bound in here. And that is what we want. We want a completely clean slate. Next, we're going to go back to the Control Profiles menu, and we're going to click on BK Dual Alphas or Dual T16s or whatever profile you've downloaded. And again, we'll go keyboard, mouse, joystick, joystick. Again, 1 or 2, it doesn't matter. I'll just stick to 1 and click load. Now we're going to open this and just make sure. Yep, you can see there's a bunch of buttons here populated. Now one thing you want to check always is your flight movement, because this doesn't always get bound. So check your pitch, your yaw, and your roll. A lot of times these are not bound, but it looks like it worked this time. It usually works whenever you clear the bindings using my file. For some reason, when you use Star Citizen's clear all bindings file, these will not bind. But now we should be bound. So you can take a look and see everything in here is fully bound. Now I know I had you use the joystick, keyboard, and mouse. And if I go over there, you can see that's all default. Everything in here is default, so you don't have to really make any changes here at all. Now that that's done, we want to go ahead and test our bindings. So we're going to jump into Arena Commander. Now before we go into Arena Commander, there's actually a couple options you may want to check here. So I'm going to just go back to options and go into game settings. And I'm going to scroll through here. Now one of the things that sometimes I require for my bindings is to lock ping controls to scanning mode, and this is usually at the very bottom. However, for 3.17 we don't need to do that, but for other builds you might, and other joysticks you might. So for now I'm going to leave it off, but just know that sometimes if you ever find that your ping is going off when you're firing your weapons or something, you may have to come in here and turn it off here. Or vice versa, if your weapons are firing when your ping is happening. It's not a good thing. So other things you may want to check is if you scroll up a bit here, your look ahead. I don't like look ahead. I usually turn it off. It's preference, but I use head tracking, so I like it turned off. Another thing I turn off is the auto zoom on lock target. That's annoying. And then there are other things like, let's see, my lead lag pip reticle. I like lag to start off with. There is a button binding on most of my bindings to switch this, so you can change it if you like. That should just about do it. I think everything else is pretty much fine. So let's go ahead and go back. Now we are going to go into Arena Commander to test our bindings. I recommend you do this, especially if it's the first time you've ever used my bindings. You want to get used to flying your ship and basically make sure everything works before you jump into the PU and you crash a ship. Alright, so we're going to go to single player. We're going to select free flight. Broken Moon or Dying Star, doesn't matter. I like Broken Moon for the colors. We're going to select a ship. Now, I'm going to select the Drake Cutlass Black because that ship has 2 weapon groups and it has VTOL thrusters and everything. So I can test just about everything on this ship except for mining. So let's go ahead and do that. And then let's launch. Okay, so here we are in Arena Commander. And again, we're just here to test out our joysticks, make sure everything's working. So the first thing we want to check out is on your right stick should be pitch, roll, and yaw. So pushing forward and back, should be your pitch, and it should be when you push forward. Obviously, pitch down. When you pull back, you should pitch up. Your yaw is on the left and right of your stick, so pushing left should yaw left, pushing right should yaw right, and your twist axis should roll. Now, I know this is not normal for most aircraft simmers, so if you don't like it, you can change it either by going into settings, or in the case of the dual vertical alphas, if you press both pinky buttons, it'll swap your roll and yaw axes. Just main thing you're looking for is to make sure that they're working correctly and they're going in the right direction. Now, one of the most common issues you have is with your left stick or your throttle. So when you push forward, oftentimes you'll fly backwards. Now, right now it seems to be working. I push forward, I fly forward, so that's working good. I pull back, I fly back. Left is left, right is right. Twisting is up and down. All that seems to be working just fine. Now, what happens if it isn't working? Now, the first thing you need to do is go into your inversion settings. No, wait. Yes. So the first thing we'll go do is go into our inversion settings. And those can be found not in the key bindings menu, but in the controls menu. So we go to controls. Now remember, you've got joystick 1 and joystick 2. So it starts off in mouse. So we'll click over to gamepad, and then you've got joystick HOTAS 1 and joystick HOTAS 2. You need to change the setting on the correct joystick. So right now, I know in this particular setup that my right joystick is joystick 1. It might be joystick 2 for you. So you may want to just change it in both menus. Change all these settings in both menus. So the first thing we're going to do is go to inversion settings. We're going to find flight movement, and for the dual sticks, you're looking for strafe forward and backwards, and you can see it's already set to yes. So that's what we want to see for this particular setup. Now, it might be different for a different setup. So if it's not working and it's set to yes, set it to no. If it's not working and it's set to no, set it to yes, obviously. Some other things we want to check are the velocity limiter. Sometimes that's backwards. Relative. I believe I use relative on most of my settings. So velocity limiter relative, acceleration limiter relative, and the space brake is very important. If your space brake is inverted, sometimes your ship will not move at all in any of the strafe axis. You'll be able to pitch and roll and yaw, but you will not be able to strafe or move forward or back. And you can tell that's happening if this is inverted. So you invert this and all of a sudden you can move, or if you pull on your space brake and then all of a sudden you can move when you have it held down, then you know that your space brake needs to be inverted. Another common inversion that you need to do is your mining laser. Now, it's not set on this one. I believe, I don't know if it is set on any of these. I don't think so. But sometimes you may need to invert the mining throttle. Make sure you click on the mining plus here. Don't change this one. Change the one that actually says mining throttle. So if you go to mining and all of a sudden your throttle is inverted, it's at full power, and then you have to pull it to bring power back, you can invert this setting. Another thing you can check in this menu is your sensitivity curves. So I'm going to go ahead and click plus on the sensitivity curves, and again go to flight, and then flight movement. And this is what I like to see. This is how I like mine set up. So I like about a 1.3 on pitch and yaw. Anything between 1 and 1.2, 1.3 is usually a good setting. It gives you a little more accuracy in the center of your stick without taking away too much linearity. Flight roll, a lot of ships are really sensitive, especially stuff like the Gladius and the Arrow. So if you fly any quick ships, you may want to set this to 2 or higher. For your strafing movements, if you're on dual sticks, you'll probably want to set those to 3. That'll give you the most precise control over when you're landing and taking off doing slow speed maneuvers. Now, if you're using a throttle, leave all these to 1. And basically, you'll have on flight strafe forward if you're on the throttle. So that should be 1 on flight strafe forward. Okay, and let's see, anything else I can tell you about in here? Of course, here's your dead zone settings. If you have a joystick that wanders, you can increase your dead zone. And that should about do it for this menu. So let's go back. Oh, okay. Here's another common issue. This is a very common issue. So if your joysticks are swapped, if for some reason your left joystick is pitch and roll and your right joystick is strafing, well, you're going to want to change that. And the only way that you can change that is via the console menu. So you have to hit your little tilde key, which is the little key to the left of your number 1 key, and that'll bring up this console. And you're going to type pp underscore resort devices space joystick space 1 space 2 and hit enter, and you'll see 351 actions move from 0 to 1, 158 1 to 2. Depending on your setup, it'll be different numbers, but you see that the actions were moved. And now if I close this, well, now my left stick, now it's inverted for me. Now it's wrong for me. So my left stick is pitch, roll, and yaw, while my left stick is strafe. So I'll go ahead and put that command in again, and now I'm back. Now for those of you that want to add a third device like pedals or a second throttle, doing that becomes a lot more complicated because you have to know exactly what your device number is, and it has to be resort devices joystick. You can only swap 2, so maybe it'll be 2 and 3 you want to swap, or 1 and 3 you want to swap, or 1 and 2 you want to swap. You have to, and you'll have to figure that out. And the more joysticks add, the more difficult that becomes, which is why I do not support any joystick configurations with more than 2 input devices. Anyway, that should about cover it. If you have any issues, make sure to check that README. If you have any issues, make sure to read the README. If you don't find your problem in there, feel free to contact me. You can contact me via YouTube comments, which is the most common. I check those every day. Also, I'm on Reddit, Twitter, and on Spectrum. So just look for me in any of those platforms and shoot me a question, and I'll usually get back to you pretty quick. Now, if you ask me something that's on the README, I'm going to call you out. I'm going to say, have you read the README first? So make sure to read the README. Okay. All right. Have a great day. I hope you enjoy your new joystick setup. If you did, make sure to go ahead and give me a like and subscribe. It's not a big deal to me. Subscriber count isn't my goal. I'm just here to help, but it does keep me motivated to keep making videos and keep creating these bindings. So yeah, until next time, this is Buzzkiller, and I'll see you in the verse.